Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. It is Saturday, and we're about to see this snow event get underway. And usually by now we have at least a fair idea of what's going to happen. And I think for most of the area that may very well be the case, but there are still a lot of variables at play for the places that are going to be very, very close to essentially the rain-snow line. And we're going to take a look at what we have with respect to watches and warnings and advisories. So let me just bring up a close shot of this as we go into midday. We've got winter storm warnings up for northeastern New Jersey, the northern areas of New York City, Westchester, up north into northern Westchester County, up into Putnam County, and then all of Connecticut, Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts. Boston is just outside the winter storm warning area. However, Providence is in the winter storm warning area, as is Hartford, New York City. Philadelphia is under a winter weather advisory, and we have advisories up for the northwestern counties of New Jersey, down southward into southwest New Jersey, and even extending into Monmouth County, except the immediate coast. And we also have advisories up now for eastern Pennsylvania, including Scranton, Allentown, and back to the southwest, Lancaster, Harrisburg, into south central PA. And those advisories actually extend a bit further along. I'll bring up the Weather Service's wider map here. And here we go. And you can see they cover a good chunk of southern and southeastern Pennsylvania, north central Maryland into northeastern Virginia. So, this pretty well is lining up from that respect with regards to, where we sort of thought things would happen with the advisories. Now, here's the problem. That winter storm warning is actually for Long Island anyway. Long Island has actually been split in half. The northern half of the island, if those of you don't know Long Island, right across the middle of the island is a Long Island Expressway. And having lived here for many, many years, it often becomes kind of the line in the sand. And it's happened many times where it would be raining or a mix south of the expressway, but north of the expressway, it's mostly snow. I'm actually about 9 to 10 miles inland from the ocean, and it makes a huge difference. Plus, we have somewhat hilly terrain here, which, believe it or not, can hold on and trap cold air, even if it only makes the difference of 1 degree. And I've seen instances where I've gotten double the snowfall than areas just 2 miles to the south of me. Now, I have gone, and I am staying with this snowfall forecast map that I have. I'm going to, say up front, like I did yesterday, that there are going to be busts in here in terms of the forecast. There are going to be places that are going to get more, and there are probably going to be places that are going to get less. And I think I'm undercutting the Weather Service's forecast amounts as they have it. They have a larger area of 4 to 6 and even some 6 to 8 amounts in a few places. I went for the coastal areas. I've got a slushy mix, maybe 1 to maybe 3. The further north and west you go, you're going to start to get higher amounts. And I've got a 3 to 5 inch line just to the just north of New York City. Okay, and you know what? It's not going to be exact. You can tug that line in either direction at various points. I don't know where it's exactly going to be. Some people seem to think that I should be able to give them an exact flake count, and if they haven't figured out that it doesn't work that way by now, they never are. But I have a broad 3 to 5 inch zone across Pennsylvania, through northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, through Connecticut. So, by my forecast, I probably wouldn't have the winter storm warnings up. This is just a very tough call. You've got temperatures that are absolutely marginal in a large area. You've got models that are giving anywhere from 0.4 to 0.8 of an inch of precip. Some of the reliable models seem to be going higher toward the higher end. So I'm not, I don't have too big of a problem with that, but we're kind of at the point where we just kind of, let's just get this underway so we can see where everything lines up and we'll go from there. Precipitation is starting to move into range of the northeastern regional radar. You can see it on the western edge here. So this is as of noon. You're going to see this all fill in across Pennsylvania and New Jersey from mid to late afternoon, and then gradually spread over New York City during the late afternoon and evening into the Hudson Valley, Long Island, and Connecticut and Rhode Island, and eventually into southeastern Massachusetts. The key is for the immediate coast, Long Island, northeast coastal New Jersey. I think there's where the problem lies, and maybe about 10 or 15 miles north and west of there, as we watch to see where this rain-snow line, how it vacillates as we go through the night. And, the models are not helping. They really aren't, because we have, and I mentioned this yesterday with respect to my own view of things. I like to use the NAM. The reason why I like to use the NAM in the short range is because, I've worked with it for so long. I kind of have a really good sense of its various idiosyncrasies. And one of the things that disturbs me about the NAM is that if we had one of the other global models kind of going along with this, I would feel a whole lot better with the forecast all the way around. In fact, if I did that, I probably might have amounts nudged up a bit than what I'm showing. But unfortunately, that is not the case. And I'm wondering, why is not this, usually the NAM has got, do I have the right one? Let me make sure I got the right NAM model. Having a little bit of issues here, so just let's see. I don't think I have the correct NAM model up. Yeah, okay, I didn't. All right, so let's go to the tight northeast so we can get a view of of all of this, and we'll let it load, and then we'll start over at the beginning. There we go. So now we're at it. The NAM has been the coldest of all the models. And I think this is the case because it has that northern stream energy that sort of tries to get involved in all of this. And as a result, you've got the model putting the boundary, the 0-degree isotherm, the 32-degree isotherm, the freezing line, virtually right over Long Island and New York City, and then going south. So, when I look at some of the temperatures on the data going up aloft, it's in the past I would have used it as a way of supporting the contention that the precipitation would be mostly snow for even some coastal areas. You can see the NAM now brings in some rain over Long Island on its latest run, but it keeps it all snow in western Long Island, New York City, Hudson Valley, northeast New Jersey. One of the other keys in all this is the low that's developing. It's going to have a brief burst where it intensifies rapidly for about 6 hours, and that's going to cause the precipitation to develop and develop rather quickly and strongly, and that creates a variable because if you get under that development, sometimes you can get a burst of heavy precipitation for several hours. So, the NAM is kind of telling you that you need to bank on this in order for this to occur. And then we move the low out to the northeast. This is fast, folks. It comes in the late afternoon. It's done well before daybreak and over with. Now, for the areas just inland, you can see that the model keeps it mostly snow. The darker blue would be the heavier snow. So that's where I have the 3 to 5. The Weather Service has got 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 in some places. And then it moves on out toward the northeast. My general view in all of this, given what's going on, is that the Weather Service numbers, in my opinion, may be a little bit too bullish. Perhaps I might in hindsight, I may wind up being a little too bearish, too low. We'll see. In about 6 hours, this will all be getting underway, and we will be able to, we'll know what the answer is one way or the other. Now, I want to jump over, we're going to jump to the HRRR model, because the HRRR model is among the shortest of the short range. We are seeing, that's the wrong one, sorry. There we go, get the HRRR model. And what we are seeing with the HRRR is that it is favoring a colder solution. Now, this model you would think should work very well because of the fact that it's inside the range, the very, very short range. And yet, for quite a while now, this model has not worked well. Recently, it seems to have been working a bit better, but it's still not trustworthy in my view. And notice that it keeps it mostly snow, much more snow-wise than any of the others, as that low moves out to the northeast. And there you are actually to the east-northeast. And in fact, when we look at the snowfall amounts that are produced here on the HRRR, there might be still a little bit more to add to this. But this is what this model does, and you can see the effect of that rain snow line being just along the south shore of Long Island, so just north and west of there. It produces 6-inch plus wet snows. This is at a 10-to-1 ratio. I tend to think that the ratio is going to be lower than that, maybe at around 8-to-1. So again, if it's producing 6 to 8 at 10-to-1, it may only wind up being the 3 to 5, and that's the other reason why I cut back. If we were dealing with temperatures in the upper 20s, I'd say fine. But right now, where I am, I'm 42, okay, in central Long Island. And I'm likely to be, at best, during heavy snow in this event. If it happens, you might see your thermometers drop down to 32, 33. So this is going to be a very slushy, a very wet snow. And that's going to mean that the snow ratios are going to be under 10-to-1. So, I'm thinking that even in a worst case scenario, the lower numbers make sense to me in terms of the forecast. The NAM model for this total snow has it. Now, here's where the NAM, because of the effect of rain, it has the band right through New York City. Has some heavy amounts down even to southeastern PA and into north central Maryland, on up to about Philadelphia, just north and west of Philadelphia. But you can see it does produce north and west of the Turnpike in New Jersey. It has 6-inch plus snows into the Hudson Valley, all of Connecticut. Long Island is in maybe a coating to 3, and the further northwest you go, the higher the amounts. So this compensates for the fact that the NAM this today is a little bit warmer than its prior runs. It was colder during yesterday. Then it started to show a very, very slight shift northward as all these models sort of come together. Now, look at the GFS. Okay, this is the thing. These global models, when this is all over with, we're going to have a very good lesson here in what works, what works and what doesn't, and why. But the GFS is pretty warm. It has hardly any snow along coastal areas, and you have to go, north and west of 287 in New Jersey and Long Island to see some 4-inch or so snow amounts. And it really isn't overly aggressive because it produces much less in the way of precip. It doesn't mean that it's right, but this is one of those situations where if you got something that's forecast to develop on top of you and one of your models is bullish with that, well, it better be right, because otherwise you're going to run into a problem. Here's the Canadians' view. And the Canadian model, perhaps a little bit more aggressive than the GFS and a little bit colder because it does have some 3-inch amounts over Long Island and a 4 to 5-inch band. Now, you know what? If that works out, my forecast is not that much different than what the Canadian did. So I have now put myself into the position of actually having to root for the Canadian model to be correct. Here's another reason why I have paused with this. Here's the RGEM model, which is the regional Canadian model, and that does have hits home runs sometimes. It's got that band, but it's got a very sharp cutoff. I'm sitting in nothing where I am, and if you go into the western parts of Long Island, that's where the snow line starts. And then there's a few inches around New York City, a few slushing inches, and just northwest of there, you've got this band of 3, 4, 5 inches. So actually, the RGEM would not be a huge fail for me. This would work out in most areas for me in terms of the forecast. So, we're having fun here, folks. Let me just bring it back to GFS for a moment, and then we're going to take a look at the long range because the long range, there are things going on that I think we need to deal with. So here is we'll get the GFS snow map. Here's the GFS on the surface. And this, of course, is already when it's long gone. This is the GFS does not show you the actual what it thinks is the radar presentation. And it's in 6-hour increments. But even at the start, it starts my area as rain. Southern New Jersey is rain. You can see where the snow is. Then by 1 a.m., your low is off the coast. But look where the rain snow line is on the GFS. It's all the way up. It's actually west of 287 into northwest New Jersey, up the Hudson Valley, right near or just along Route 84, up in Connecticut. And then after that, cold air comes back in. So it suggests that there be a changeover to mix of rain in the middle of this. That would cut amounts down also. The Canadian model, back to this one. Canadian model has, there we go. So here's the beginning, kind of like the GFS. The only difference is the Canadian seems to pull the cold air down as the low develops. So the rain never really moves north of the very immediate coast. All the northern and western areas are all snow. So actually from its prior run from last night, the Canadian model is a little bit colder. This is just about as difficult to forecast for certain areas as you can get. And as I said earlier, there are going to be areas where forecasts are going to be too low. There are going to be areas, I think, where forecasts are going to be too high. So why don't we now jump over to the long range? Because that was pretty interesting last night. And I want to see if models carry over on this. We're once again seeing, by the way, the atmospheric dynamics, the broad dynamics in terms of where the strength of some of these ridges and troughs, being stretched to huge extremes, and models from run to run are really having a hard time handling all this. We saw that happen back in November when we had that period of blocking for a couple of weeks in the Atlantic. We saw that during the time when we had the East Pacific oscillation completely off the wall negative and at an extreme. And that created some forecast headaches along the way. And the NAO is going to do the same thing, as this is going to be going strongly negative. But as we look at the upper air this week, we're going to be very spring-like here in the eastern states. We've got a big ridge off the East Coast. We've got a deep trough out in the west, and that big ridge in the Gulf of Alaska that just doesn't want to go away. Now, over time, if you watch up east of Greenland, you can just see it on the edge of the screen where the brownish area shows up. That is the blocking high that sets up between Greenland and Europe. You've got a deep trough that forms south along 40 degrees west where an upper low is going to develop there. And you see it there spinning away. The run today, that creates blocking. So any energy that comes into the east is probably going to be forced to move further south than it otherwise will. And here you can see this is a blocking signature here where you have the Atlantic jet stream displaced well to the south, higher than normal pressures up from eastern Canada on across Greenland. So we have a block that's developed there. The problem as far as snow lovers are concerned is the fact that you've got this very deep trough that's still out in the west, and you still have ridging that's in the Gulf of Alaska. And until that gets out of the way, the prospects for a storm in the east are rather difficult to achieve. Not that it's impossible, but it's difficult. And look at the teleconnections as I bring them up, because they are really stretched. This was based on the overnight run, but we have an off-the-wall negative North Atlantic oscillation that is forecast to crash shortly, around February 22nd, and then drop down into deep negative territory as we move into early March. But it's the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, that is at such extremes here. Usually these things are between minus 200 and minus 600. So, I'm sorry, minus 200 and plus 200. We've got this thing stretched down almost over minus 600 on its reading and how it's measured. That is, if you're looking at a situation where you've got a trough in the east and the ridge in the west, this is not only at the opposite extreme, but the trough in the west is as deep as it could, as intense as you could get it. The ridge in the east is probably as intense as you can get it, and that is setting up this this broad negative this very strong negative signal there, and it stays very strongly negative right into early March. So if something's going to happen in the east, we're going to have to do it with the NAO and maybe a little bit of the EPO. If the EPO only gets goes negative, then goes slightly positive, then comes back to neutral toward the end. So we're really going to you would have to do it solely with the NAO and not much else. The ZUK 416B. Teleconnections change daily. Well, they change as the models change. It is worth looking at, I think, because you have to get a sense of how stable the pattern is and where the changes are happening. Actually, in terms of the indices, they've been remarkably constant over the last week or so with these signals regarding the three indexes that we're looking at here: the Pacific North America Index, the North Atlantic Oscillation, and the East Pacific Oscillation. I think that this is they are definitely useful, particularly in the short range. They're going to change. Sometimes they change somewhat. I wouldn't use the word radically, but they do change enough in the short range that it could impact your short range forecast. So that's an important thing to be aware of. Shelly Man Studios, you think the winter party is over, and it might very well be, but I would not, as a forecaster, make conclusions like that. I'm not really a long range guy, but maybe the long range people might say that it is. I don't know. I find that even in the worst of patterns, it finds a way to do things, and for snow lovers, and we're seeing that tonight. I mean, it's nothing crazy special. Snow lovers don't care. Even when they get a coating to an inch, they get excited. But I wouldn't say that it's over. The patterns are what they are, and you just have to kind of fight your way through them and figure out what the implications are. I mean, you know what? All of this, as Anthony Ord has just wonderfully reminded me, I want to take a look at Europe, because this east-based block really has implications for the weather in Europe. And we saw that yesterday when I put up the 2 meter temperature anomalies. Let's see if that trend is the same here that it had from yesterday, because let me just bring the European map up. It did show cold sweeping in from Siberia and moving westward into Western Europe and even into Southwestern Europe. So why don't we run through this? These are the views of below normal and above normal temperatures moving through next week. There's cold up in Scandinavia, and then some cold that moves down into Western Europe, going through this week. Temperatures averaging below normal in a large area, including Britain and Ireland, by the way. And there is this sweep of cold air that comes in from Siberia. Actually, from yesterday, as I remember it, it seems to have changed a bit in that it wasn't really showing this cold sweep early in the forecast period, but more in the last 6 days of the 2-week period. And it seems to want to sweep down some cold air sooner than that, because we're at day 8 and 9 here, and it's cold everywhere. Then actually temperatures start to moderate a little bit now in the longer range. So it seems to want to be bringing this Siberian cold pool in faster and stronger in the shorter range, and then a bit of a break and maybe something lining up again for the longer range. So pretty interesting developments here. Quick check of precip implications, if there are any. This is a tougher thing for me because, I've noticed watching all this through the winter months of how strangely some of these storms behave across Europe, not getting a full grasp of it. Seeing lows moving in all different directions. But you can see how the profile here is as we go into day 8 and 9. Looks like a storm way up infecting Eastern Europe and Western Russia. I'm sorry. Yes, Eastern Europe and Western Russia. Not a whole lot of precip going on in much of the rest of Europe, at least according to this particular model run. So let me come back to you guys and address any of your questions and observations here. Thanks for joining me on a Saturday afternoon lunchtime. Bring me up to the top here. Let's get this off. And yes, a lot more with AC units for Wednesday. I mean, certainly temperatures in the 60s and 70s riding up the eastern seaboard with that big ridge developing in the east. Also, in terms of whether it sticks with those temperatures problematic, what happens is if it snows hard enough, that temperature, the thermometer will drop down to 33, 32, especially right at ground level. The temperatures will be, just near or just above freezing. So if it snows hard enough, it probably will stick, and it is falling. It will be falling at night, so that will help. But you know what? We're going to go right back into the 40s tomorrow here in my area. This stuff is going to melt so fast. So when you wake up tomorrow morning, if you see a beautiful scenic shot of some wet snow clinging on trees and so on, get the pictures done right away, because it will. The snow is going to melt pretty quickly. I think for Long Island, for those of you who are referencing Long Island in your questions, I got to tell you, it's a really, really tough forecast here. I mean, I'm kind of, like I've been saying, I've been uncomfortably comfortable with what I went through, with what I've been going for, and I'm now having seen everything. It really is just a matter of waiting and seeing what happens. Which model is matching up better, Anthony Orr, in terms of the radar presentation? You know what? I didn't really get a chance to give that a good look, but that'll be something I'll do after we're done to take a look at that. The thing is, I want to see it coming. It's really what it does when it gets in range. Because that's when all the real development happens later this afternoon, and that's going to be that, and where it's snowing and where it's raining is going to be very, very helpful, I think, in figuring out where this ultimately goes. And no, Shelly Man Studios, flowers will probably not bloom here next week. I will just tell you, by the way, again, this happens every year. Go back at the Weather Service. If you go to the Weather Service, pull up your Climo stats for last year, the day-to-day highs and lows. And, we hit mid-60s in New York City, I believe, last year in late February, the second half of February, 3 or 4 times at least. So this is nothing new here. It happens every year. It happened when I was a kid. I can remember instances where it got into the low 70s. This is not anything special. It's reflecting the pattern that we have. So it stands to reason that if we're very, very warm, there's probably a part of the country that's going to be very, very cold. And I would point to the northern plains, northern Rockies, as seeing temperatures there below average, and also out in the west with that deep trough that's out in the west. I don't close airports or schools, Philip Hood. However, I will tell you, because you do have a morning flight, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. You know how airlines and airports operate. So might there be slight delays? Yeah, sure. I would think that they would be able to stay ahead of the game. If it changes over to rain overnight, it's not going to be a problem at Kennedy, and this thing should be long gone. But you know what? There are other variables at play, so you kind of need to check with them. The storm will be long. The system will be long out to the east. The precipitation will be over with by 3 or 4 in the morning. So by the time you get going, it'll be bright and sunny tomorrow morning, and that'll be that. It amazes me. Pop the question as you get asked. I don't mind. I know everybody. It's a natural thing to ask questions. You know what it is? I'm sitting in a position here where I've been asked that question so many times over the last 40 years. And I get the school closing questions all the time as well, and it's understandable to ask the question. So that's why I kind of put it out there ahead of time. I don't close schools. I don't do any of that stuff. I can't tell you what the criteria are. Every place has different criteria when it comes to whether they close or whether they don't close. So you really need to ask those people the questions as far as what the criteria are, and then criteria is whichever, and then match it up. Okay, that I don't know. I just don't know. There are school districts here that close for coating to an inch. Why? I don't understand. I know why, but because of liability issues. But I don't understand it. Let's see. Joshua Pan's watching the radar. He's got snow already on the Allegheny Front and the Southern Blue Ridge, according to the radar. Yeah, as I pulled it up before, it's going to be blossoming out over the next 4 to 6 hours. Yes, and that's right. And schools are, a lot of schools are closed next week anyway. Next week is a big vacation week with the President's Day, being that we're at the President's Day holiday weekend, and it's snowing on a weekend, and it's snowing on a Saturday night, where it will impact the least amount of people. It'll be done before Sunday morning, and we'll have a beautiful day here tomorrow with sunshine and temperatures in the 40s. All right, folks, I'm going to put an end to this here at this time. Thank you very much for being here today. We will try and get another live stream going. I'll shoot for late this evening sometime. At that point, we might have a better idea for the areas that are critical in terms of whether it's going to be rain or snow or both, and how it'll impact the accumulation amounts. I'm not anticipating making any changes between now and then. So it is what it is at this point. And then let's bring on the warmer air from next week. Website posts on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. I'll have I may do a couple of lives on Facebook. So you might want to check those out. And I'm not sure when, but you might want to check those out throughout the day and into tonight. Take care, folks. See you later.